Temperance, not indulgence, Why We Need Self-Control by Callista F. Freiheit. In today's world, the clarion call to gratify every craving and desire is unrelenting. Our culture, with its pervasive and powerful influence, ceaselessly inundates us with a narrative that glorifies unrestrained consumption. Through a barrage of advertisements and societal norms, we are cajoled into a continuous cycle of indulgence. These messages, cloaked in the guise of empowerment, seductively whisper, "You deserve it." They impel us to eat beyond our hunger, spend beyond our means, binge-watch beyond our leisure, and indulge beyond our needs. This unyielding encouragement to satisfy every impulse permeates our daily lives, influencing our choices and habits. However, as followers of Christ and adherents to Christian principles, we are called to navigate a different path. This path, less traveled and often countercultural, is marked by the virtue of temperance. It's a path that challenges the prevailing ethos of instant gratification and endless consumption. In contrast to the worldly narrative that equates happiness with the accumulation and enjoyment of material things, the Christian perspective values moderation and self-restraint. In the Christian context, temperance is not merely a moral guideline but a beacon guiding us toward a more meaningful and purposeful existence. It beckons us to exercise control over our appetites and desires, teaching us that true contentment and joy are found not in the fleeting pleasures of the material world but in a life lived in harmony with divine principles. This virtue calls us to critically assess the influences around us, discerning between what is beneficial and what is detrimental to our spiritual growth and well-being. In embracing temperance, we are not simply rejecting the excesses promoted by society, we are affirming a deeper understanding of fulfillment. This understanding acknowledges that our worth and happiness are not contingent on external validations or material acquisitions. Instead, they are deeply rooted in our relationship with God and adherence to His teachings. Therefore, while society continues to bombard us with messages advocating for indulgence, as Christians, we strive to uphold the value of temperance as a guiding light in our lives. This commitment to moderation and self-control is not an act of self-denial but an expression of our faith and a testament to our belief in a higher calling. It's an acknowledgement that our ultimate satisfaction and peace come not from the world's transient and often illusory pleasures but from a life aligned with Christ's enduring values and teachings. In a world where the pursuit of personal desires often leads to a never-ending quest for more, temperance is a reminder of the richness and fulfillment of a balanced and grounded life. It encourages us to seek fulfillment not in the material but in the spiritual, not in the fleeting but in the eternal. By choosing the path of temperance, we choose a life that is richer, deeper, and more aligned with the Christian call to live purposefully, in service to God and others. Temperance, a cornerstone of Christian virtue, represents the judicious balance and self-control pertinent to our engagement with worldly pleasures. This virtue is not outright negating our desires, rather, it is a conscious regulation of them. It requires us to practice discernment, to wisely distinguish between desires that uplift and those that could lead to spiritual bondage. Temperance is about understanding and respecting our human limitations and using this understanding to guide our choices and actions. It is about identifying the thin line where enjoyment does not morph into dependency, where pleasure does not become a pitfall. In the exercise of temperance, there is a subtle but profound wisdom. It involves recognizing that while certain desires and appetites are inherent to our human nature, they must not be allowed to dominate or define our existence. This understanding fosters a balanced approach to life, where indulgences are enjoyed in moderation and within the boundaries of what is wholesome and beneficial. Temperance is not a call to a joyless existence, it is an invitation to experience life's pleasures in a way that enriches rather than detracts from our spiritual and moral well-being. It is about finding joy and contentment in moderation, understanding that the greatest pleasures often lie in simplicity and restraint. Conversely, the absence of temperance in our lives can lead to significant spiritual and moral consequences. Without this virtue, we become increasingly susceptible to the whims of our emotions, such as unbridled anger, or fall prey to various vices, including gluttony and avarice. The lack of temperance can erode our ability to make thoughtful, considered decisions, leaving us vulnerable to the impulsiveness and caprices of our desires. As our discernment weakens, we may find ourselves ensnared in patterns of behavior that are detrimental to our spiritual health and overall well-being. We risk becoming slaves to our impulses, losing sight of the higher values and principles that should guide our lives. Temperance is thus pivotal in fostering self-mastery. It empowers us to align our passions and desires with the divine will, fostering a harmonious balance between our earthly inclinations and spiritual aspirations. This alignment is not a mere coincidence of desires and divine intent, it is the result of a conscious effort to mold our will in accordance with God's. By practicing temperance, we learn to moderate our impulses, channeling them in constructive and edifying ways, both for ourselves and those around us. Ultimately, temperance is a journey towards self-awareness and spiritual maturity. It encourages us to look beyond the immediate gratification of our desires and to consider the longer-term implications of our choices. By embracing temperance, we open ourselves to a life of greater peace, joy, and fulfillment, rooted in the understanding that true contentment is found not in the world's excesses but in a life lived according to God's will and purpose. The path to temperance is an inward journey that begins with a deep and sincere introspection. It necessitates a frank and thorough examination of our daily practices and underlying vulnerabilities. The key lies in self-reflection, taking an honest look at our lives and asking critical questions about our conduct. We must explore our predispositions towards overindulgence, whether sporadic or habitual. It's crucial to identify the catalysts of our indulgent behaviors. Is it stress that nudges us towards overeating? Is boredom leading us to excessive spending? Or perhaps it's the influence of peers that sways us into unhealthy habits? Recognizing these patterns is the initial, vital step toward temperance. Once we have identified our tendencies and the triggers that lead to excess, we must approach the path of change with humility and openness to divine intervention. This process is not about self-flagellation or guilt but rather a constructive reevaluation of our habits and thought processes. With prayer and seeking guidance from God, we can start to realign our actions and thoughts with the virtues of temperance and moderation. This spiritual journey involves asking for strength and wisdom to discern and overcome our vulnerabilities, leaning on God's grace to transform our lives. It's imperative to understand that temperance is not about imposing rigid austerity upon ourselves. True temperance is marked by self-control that is gently infused with grace. It is not a relentless battle of willpower against desire but a graceful balancing act guided by our faith and relationship with Christ. In this walk with Christ, we find the source of genuine fulfillment and joy. He offers liberation from the extremes that bind us, whether those extremes are hedonism or asceticism. By surrendering each area of our lives to Christ's will, we find a powerful ally in our quest for balance. This surrender is not a loss of freedom, rather, it is the very essence of freedom. We are freed from the compulsions that once dominated our lives by placing our trust in Christ. We discover that in Christ, we have everything we need for a life of contentment and joy. Our pursuit of temperance becomes not a burdensome task but a joyful expression of our faith and love for God. Through Him, we learn to enjoy life's pleasures in a healthy, balanced way and in harmony with our spiritual calling. Our modern society often promotes a self-centered approach to life that prioritizes immediate self-gratification. This pervasive mindset suggests that fulfillment is found in quickly satisfying every whim and desire. This philosophy starkly contrasts the life and teachings of Christ, who embodied the essence of selfless temperance. Christ demonstrated this through His consistent and unwavering obedience to the Father, even in the face of great temptation. His life serves as a profound example of the strength and freedom that come from a disciplined and self-controlled existence, deeply rooted in commitment to a higher purpose. Christ's teachings challenge us to look beyond the superficial allure of instant gratification. He taught the importance of seeking spiritual wealth over material abundance, urging us to seek first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. Matthew 6:33. This directive invites us to prioritize our spiritual well-being and align our desires with God's will. It reassures us that by focusing on our spiritual growth and seeking God's kingdom first, our material and emotional needs will be met as well. Temperance, as taught and exemplified by Christ, is far more than a mere virtue, it is a pathway to true liberation and inner peace. It invites us to transcend the world's temporary and often deceptive pleasures and embrace a life of meaningful contentment. Practicing temperance is not about denying ourselves joy but about discovering a deeper, more enduring form of joy that comes from living in harmony with God's will. As we endeavor to incorporate the principle of temperance into our daily lives, it is crucial to keep our focus on the eternal. This perspective shift allows us to recognize worldly pleasure's transient nature and value the enduring happiness in God's presence. In doing so, we understand that the greatest joy and peace are not found in the things of this world but in a life lived in close communion with God. Therefore, as we walk the path of temperance, let us do so with our eyes fixed on eternity, confident in the knowledge that while we may forego certain fleeting pleasures, we are choosing a greater, more fulfilling joy, the everlasting joy that comes from a life aligned with God's purpose and presence. This choice is not a sacrifice but a liberation, a release from the fleeting allure of immediate gratification in favor of a deeper, more meaningful existence. By embracing temperance, we open ourselves to experiencing the fullness of life as God intended. We cultivate a sense of inner tranquility and contentment that is not easily shaken by external circumstances. As we grow in temperance, we find that our desires and needs are met in more satisfying and wholesome ways than we could have imagined. The peace that comes from living a temperate life is profound and enduring, transcending the fleeting highs and lows of indulgent living. In conclusion, temperance, as a cornerstone of Christian living, offers us a path to true freedom and peace. It's a journey that requires discipline, reflection, and a deepening relationship with Christ. As we practice temperance, we learn to appreciate the richness of life within the boundaries set by our faith. We discover that the greatest pleasures are not found in the excesses of the material world but in a life centered around God's will and purpose. Let us, therefore, strive to incorporate temperance into our daily lives, remaining steadfastly focused on the eternal. In doing so, we gain not only a sense of peace and contentment in the present but also the assurance of eternal joy in the presence of God. This eternal perspective transforms our understanding of pleasure and fulfillment, guiding us to seek lasting and deeply rooted joys in our spiritual lives. In a world that often equates happiness with material gain and an instant gratification, the practice of temperance stands as a beacon of hope and wisdom. It reminds us that our ultimate fulfillment lies not in what we can acquire or consume but in our relationship with God and our commitment to living a life that honors Him. In this commitment, we find true freedom, peace, and joy. Thank you for stopping by. Until next time, be gracious and God bless.